Happy Sunday, people. We're back again. Lads Talk Health on my Bromley. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in over the last few weeks. The engagement's been amazing. The feedback's been incredible after as well. And we've connected with some amazing people. So I'm hoping you guys get a lot from these talks. Last week was a big one. We touched on common law, went through all the foundations, and that video has actually been spread across a number of different social media platforms now. And so many people have actually reached in to say how insightful it was and how much they took from it. Because as we mentioned, we are all entitled to these rights as a human, and it's something that we're not really educated on. So tonight we're going to be touching on another deep topic today, and a lot of it is going to be based on James's story. And we're going to go back to, hi Amanda, we're going to go back to his childhood, and there's going to be a timeline to where he's got to at this moment in time, but also what actually happened last year where he come out and told his story and what's happened to him since. And so I'm just waiting for James to come on now. 2 secs. And so what's happened to him since? And at Lads Talk Health, it was all about telling stories, sharing stories. And sometimes I think today actually is Mental Health Awareness Day for the world. And sometimes we do have our stories, which, so I'm just logging them on, we don't share, and we do hold with us all of our life, and there's certain things that eat us away inside. And something about hearing someone else's story can be the one catapult to allow your whole life to change as well. You right, buddy?
How you doing? I was waving to the peeps as well. Hello, everyone. So you're in flow, weren't you? How you doing, mate? All right?
Yeah, well, thank you. I always get uncomfortable doing an intro on my own. I get lost without you.
I love you too, dude. Air hug. Don't ever do that again. Yeah, no, I could hear what you were saying. And yeah, I've got to stop doing that thing. People, if anyone's been watching Harry's post, hello, promoting kindness, about I'm in an erring. Please pull me up tonight every time I and I have to do some press ups or something. Anyway, yes, it's a great introduction. Did you actually touch on the subject?
No, I was gonna leave that for you, and then come back to the reason why we're touching on this is a big one, and it was almost like we have these stories. So I want to get it across that a lot of people can connect with this, regardless of what the topic is, because we all have our own story and certain things that happened within our lives that we haven't dealt with, that we do know it's there somewhere, or we have hidden from it, and what it has done to you since. You have come out and I guess owned it now.
Yeah, that's a good word. Good label for it. Excuse me, sorry. So what triggered tonight's conversation is I recently experienced I had a conversation with a gentleman. First time I'd ever spoke to this guy. Got referred to this gentleman by someone else who's worked with me before. And basically, he's the same age as me, 40 years old. Unfortunately experienced what I did as a child, which was sexual abuse, and never dealt with it. And so that was what I was placed with that subject prior to talking to this gentleman. And then once I got on the phone to him, it really, not only did it resonate with me, but it touched my soul, because this person, I totally understood where he was, because thankfully I went through that transition. And shout out to you if you do watch this. I don't know, but if you do, it's incredible the transition you're going through currently, and the importance. So for myself, I didn't even give my parents, and this is the importance of this talk tonight, I didn't give my parents the opportunity to do anything about, to protect their child, their little boy, when it happened to me, because my little ego, unfortunately, didn't allow me to, through which we'll touch on tonight, many different emotions, which none of them were valid. But that just, as another, that just shows you, unfortunately, that's just the way the human ego is built into us. It can be scary, even from a child's perspective. And I'm talking from experience. As I said, it's experiential knowledge. It's not book smart. And I can tell you, it definitely plays a massive part in the decisions you make as a child. So as from point being, as a parent now myself, and I'll touch on coming out with it last year, but as a parent now myself, what was one of the biggest triggers for me to finally tell my wife about what had happened and whatnot, and some close family and friends, not actually just family, not friends, just well, you Hazza, your family and friend, was initially was because basically I was at that point where I when you're seeing your own children, obviously, and you do anything for your kids, any parent out there, and even parents, non-parents, you'll do anything for children in general. That's just inherent in us. But I was on a course. How it came out was, funnily enough, was an incredible young lady who shared something with me whilst I was coaching her, and I gave her this advice back about the importance when what I've now learned is in your worst vulnerabilities come your greatest strengths. But unfortunately, a lot of it gets buried. So this young lady shared something with me about her breaking point, and this amazing advice. This is your tool. This is how many young girls you could help with this story just by sharing it. And as I was talking to this girl, giving all this great advice, it was like this little mirror was coming up in front of me until it hit me square in the face. And it really stopped me in my tracks in that session because I finally realized it was time for me to deal with it. So yes, since coming out and speaking about it and talking to others and working with other men now as well that have gone through it and not dealt with it, it's become something now. It's more like a string in the bow to talk about. And I said to you, Harry, didn't I? One last thing I want to say, and before I pass it back to you, mate, is the only time it becomes awkward sometimes to talk about. The shame's gone, but it's almost when I say, we can talk about my abuse. It's not my abuse anymore. You said it perfectly, and I've referred to it as the abuse, because once you've owned it happened, you can then just let that go. And honestly, it is a massive, massive, massive weight off of my shoulders, which is what I shared with this gentleman. And yeah, so placing on tonight's talk, how do you want to tell them why the awareness is such a big thing?
Yes. So I think there's a number of different things. So me and James work with a wide range of clients, and coaching just means hearing people's stories and allowing them to deal with past that maybe has been trapped. When we talk ego and soul, that soul's been suffering for so long, it's not being heard. The ego kind of takes over. But also, my Bromley, there's a lot of parents on here. And what we're starting to experience with this whole abuse, child trafficking, sex trafficking, all these horrific things that happen that people don't really want to hear about, people don't want to tell about. But the people that have suffered, they don't tell their loved ones, they don't tell their parents. So parents always want the best for their kids. And the one thing that you want is your kids to speak back. James didn't tell his parents for a long, long, long time, and he carried this with him on his own. So all these talks that we do are for adults, but sometimes it's also to be able to share this with your kids, because they won't tell you as much as you want them to. Certain things, there's a kind, and James is going to touch on the feelings that would have come up over this period, but he's also give a platform. Again, this is a safe space to be like, right, they can reach out if it's there, because human trafficking, child paedophilia, all this horrible stuff is rife all over the world. And the more that we've gone down this truth movement and freedom, we're starting to see it all comes back to the kids pretty much every single time. These people putting these rules in place are also linked with all these horrendous crimes. And then we've gone back and we've seen like things with the orphanages, said that right?
Orphanages, yeah.
Orphanages, charities, all things, churches, all things set up from a good place, or we think so, is actually being the opposite. So we're trying to raise as much awareness as we can, because when we're looking at children, like the world is a mess. The world has been terrible for years, but the future's bright. But that future's our kids. Our future generation relies on them. So our duty is to start educating them, start allowing them to understand what is going on, and also what has happened to them. They are able to talk about it, because there's so many people all over the world now that are listening, that are there to help, that have the skill sets to be able to help people step into their power. So I really think it's a big subject. The child development is huge. And I really believe, even if you just got into one school and you started teaching them about life, teaching them about respect, teaching them about working together, teaching them about our history in a way that makes sense, the whole school would change, which would then ripple into the families, which would then ripple out into the friends and then into society. So me and James have got a number of plans going forward, and we really want to get stuck in, and a lot of that does impact the children. So again, it all ties in. So I'm asking people today, be brave, like stick through it, and then try to look at it through a few different perspectives, because sometimes in life there's people that we do not get on with and we despise sometimes. And sometimes at work they piss us off all the time. Imagine if you knew what they'd been through when they were 7. Imagine if you, and that's the reason why they like that, and you get frustrated. And we don't know people's story. And sometimes we get frustrated and wound up with someone. But really, if we actually understood each person, we heard their story, we'd be able to let go of a lot more things. I'm telling you that.
Bang on. Just want to touch on something as well with child trafficking. So in 2020, this is it's a statistic it's an American governmental statistic, which you can always think either way, but so this is one of their stats. Child trafficking in regards to the money involved was second only to arms dealing. So that's how much money goes in to trafficking children. And like Harry said, there is, and again, we'll give some examples. So who in the last 5 years remembers the Oxfam scandal with all the sex parties and the underage girls? Who remembers the actress, the very well-known actress from the Superman spin-off called Smallville, who again got arrested, found guilty, and put away, went to prison for using a charity to traffic children. So this is something that is a big problem. And as parents, we need to just be aware to make sure, for example, I'll use my example, being abused as a child. If I don't even know the indicators I may have been giving off as that child, other than going a bit wayward, definitely losing trust. Actually, there you go. Definitely in older blokes. But by not speaking up and not allowing my parents at that point to deal with it, was now being a parent, it's almost unforgivable. Even though it was me, the little child, and I've battled. Why did I not? And it's some of the feelings that when you experience these things is shame and questioning your sexuality and all sorts of things. And it was at the time I was 13, so it was an influential time of things. And it was So the point is making sure people are aware of the scale of what's going on within our local communities as well. So yes, we've given you some big statistics, but they start from our own communities. Often with abuse, it's with someone trusted. It's with someone that's been brought in as a trusted person. So it is very difficult for parents to sometimes even know or even think, because inherently we're good human beings, but who you wouldn't want to think for a second that anyone would be taking advantage of a small person, a child. It's horrific to even think, especially in that sort of nature, in a sexual nature. It's the worst of the worst, isn't it? So it's making sure that I have made my children, well, not my little girl, but my 10-year-old boy, aware of things that maybe my parents didn't make me aware of, but that's not a dig against them, but it's because of maybe the times. It was different back then. I'm 40 now, so you're talking, and it is unfortunately, whether it's more common now or it's more spoken about now, I don't know. I'm not exactly too sure, and I can't prove either way. But the point is, right now, with all of the other stresses that are being pushed on, and all the pressures that are being pushed on children in general, abuse is at an all-time high. So it's imperative as adults that we are just aware to what's going on around us, because I know it's a subject that not a lot of people want to touch on. 27 years it took me. Well, 20, I'm 40, I'm 41 next year. So yeah, so 26 years it took me to actually air it out and get that out of my system. And since I did, and with all the stereotypical blokey things that come with why I didn't say and give people the opportunity to help me at the time, it's changed my life. And now, thankfully, I'm in a position where I've been working with other people, and just by telling my story to people, and that's the thing, it's not a nice story, but it's a story that is real. Unfortunately, very, very common. It doesn't matter if a lady hears this and it was a lady that got it, doesn't matter. It's not about sex at all. It's about the actual energy that you hold on to for years, which makes you sick, which creates distrust, it creates self-limiting beliefs, your ego just feeds off it. It's about making sure these people know, actually, it feels a whole lot better to just get it out your system. One of the things I said to you, Harry, the first time I had the guts to actually say my story, because I hadn't even said my story, so my voice hadn't even heard. I'd never heard my voice say this story, so it was weird. And I was 39 years old when I'm recounting this story, sitting in a graveyard, funnily enough, waiting for my son to finish school, and I videoed myself. And I kept stopping and starting, because every time I was hearing what I was saying, my ego was going, no, fuck that, you're not going to deal with that, you're not going to speak about that, and all the rest of it that comes with it, because it does. I mean, at 13 years old, it created all sorts of weird thoughts for me at that point. But even then, at 39, it took me 3 or 4 goes to actually record it. Then I watched it back, and I broke. It's like I cried 27 years worth of them little boys' tears that had never dealt. Because that's what I realized. It stayed that little boy. Because that little boy never got a chance to talk about it and get told as a little boy, you're not in the wrong. There's nothing to it. And all the stuff that you would tell a little boy or a little girl didn't get told that. That's what you hold on to. I realize, and this goes to the work we do in soul coaching. The soul is ageless. Whatever pain it experiences at whatever age, it stays at that age. And a lot of it is with kids. And yeah, I had to experience a cleansing from my soul of that little boy finally saying, thank fuck, excuse my language, for letting this out. And since then, it's changed my life, completely changed my life. Sorry, Haz, I went on there a bit.
No, mate, this is your story today as well. And again, from your experience, no one can take that away from you. And what I would like to get out of today's session is actual you as the little boy, but now you looking back with the advice and the experience, like what advice would you be giving? And also to be talking from the eyes of a parent so other people can start relating to it. And also for any kids out there that are watching, this is, like we say, it's a safe space. Everything that is said on these platforms, anyone can reach out to us privately. Anything that comes to us stays between us. It's our safe space, and that is coaching. I think once you know that you have these people that you can trust, and that the thing that really hit me is that we work around death quite a lot. We work around quite a lot of different topics, and I'm pretty good at holding a straight face. I've always said I've had a poker face. When James told me this story, I felt the pain. I felt everything, and it was very hard for me to keep it together at that point. And the thing that really slapped me in the face is that it happens everywhere. And James had the courage to actually say it in the way he did, but other people don't. So that pain that I'm taking on, people have got that inside them every single day. And that's the thing that I really, really want to emphasize, is that being able to hear someone else's story. And James, just to touch on it, the person that has reached out to you, can you just share in the space of time that you've been speaking of what's happened just in terms of insights and stuff? Because it just shows you when you have that person to go to and you can release, the changes are instant.
Yeah, and for the record, again, just to emphasize, this is what we do with coaching. So I'm not saying this for any credit, because the beauty is this person brought every part of his heroic courage in. I was on the phone to him probably in the end for about just over an hour. So just around a coaching session, basically, and that's what it turned into. But all I did was let him know in himself that he had the most important thing that he needed to deal with what he was going through, and that was forgiveness. And all I had to do was give him an example of him looking himself, or as a small child. What would you do to that child? He said, I'd forgive him. And that was it. And that literally, I mean, it's been incredible, the change around in this gentleman, and the message he's been sending to me is just incredible. And and that was just off one phone call. And that's what I'm saying. It's not, oh, look at me, the super coach. No, it's not that. That's the power of coaching. It's the person. The person always has all of the answers. It's not like therapy. You don't sit in front of us and we get out a notebook and we're all educated, all knowing. Not at all. We're just as up and broken as anybody else. But we're all right with that. That's the thing, is being all right with that and making sure the person that's sitting in front of you, first and foremost, knows, I'm all right with you. We are absolutely on an equilibrium here. And it doesn't matter what you say. There's no judgment at all. And funny enough, the more you do say, the more you answer your own questions. It happens every single time. So yeah, it was beautiful. And I've had some really good messages from him since, really positive messages, which is lovely.
So can you take us back then, James, to give us an overview of what actually happened, just so people can get a grasp of what does go on from your experience? Okay,
so like I said, I was 13, so I was getting to that pit. Right, so backstory, if people haven't seen some of the other stuff we've done, I was brought up in a very, very strict Christian household. My dad subscribed to the born again Christian version, because there's obviously all different versions of Christianity. This one was born again. So I was brought up in a very strict born again Christian household where we had to go church every Sunday. We did the Sunday school thing. We wasn't scouts, it was campaigners. Everything was through the church. Everything was through the church, including the first nightclub. What they called? Not the after school clubs. What are they called? You know, used to go after school to the meetups. Oh, how can I forget? Everyone will know. Someone, you know, if you're around my age, where was it used to go to the group? The youth centres. It was youth centres, wasn't it? Yeah, to the youth centres, and it's still not the word, but anyway, it was on a Friday night. It was this centre that my dad run, funny enough, in the church for kids, basically kids in the area to go to. And I was only going there because my dad, I was 13. These kids were 16, 18, 20, 23, which was the age of the person. Not play centres need, but thanks very much. There's another, I can't, is it youth centre? Or youth club? I can't remember where it was. It's one of those, it's been that long. Youth clubs. Thank you, Mrs. F. Colombo. It was youth clubs, yeah. So I was going, it was the church youth club. I was only going there because of my dad. And interestingly enough, there was a bloke there. He was 24. He was 11 years older than me. So the 24-year-old, the main dude, not only in this youth club, but in that particular area where he was, is a part of East London. He was very well known, and he was known for being a lad. Nice XR3i car, went way back then when no one had those cars at 24 years old. Always had girls and all the rest of it. So my point of giving that backstory, you would never have dreamt in a million years that this person was the way he ended up being. However, what he did do is he wormed his way in with my dad. I'm not sharing this story because it's too long otherwise. Wormed his way in with my dad as changing his life and everything, becoming a Christian. And at the same time, I was going through a difficult stage at 13 where I was getting to 13. My voice was going up and down like Zed from Police Academy, and hairs were popping up. And so you're going through them weird changes as a bloke. And even at 40 years old, I still don't think I'm happy yet. So basically, I'm going through them and a difficult time with my parents. Parents don't know what to do. I latch on to this guy. The guy latches on to me, and I'm sort of blown away by, oh my God, he wants to be around me and blah, blah, blah. And he ends up getting so close in with my mum and dad and stuff that I end up start taking weekends initially going out for the day and whatnot, and he'd be buying me stuff and all the rest of it because he had a decent job, he had his own flat, and then that turned into me. Oh, come on, mum, let me stay over his house, let me stay over. And anyway, so that's how. And then eventually, my mum, because he used to come around for Sunday dinner to the household. Like, he got really in with the family. And then he introduced me. I can't remember after how many, a month, 2 months of this friendship. And it became an intense friendship. Like, I was coerced into leaving all my friends my age behind because I was getting influenced by not just him. I'd be around like a gang of 5 or 6 older lads. Like, most of them got cars, all the rest of it, and you just think, you know, it was at 13, I was like, my God, like, I'm living, I'm kingpinning. My little ego is going nuts. Look at me, I'm lodging my good friends to be with these people because they're older, they've got cars, blah, blah. And he introduced me to alcohol after a couple of months, within a couple of months, definitely. And at 13 years old, because I remember one of their, there was a bar over the Docklands, this was all when the Docklands was first going up there. There was a bar over there that we used to go to, and at 13 years old, obviously 5 or 6 pints, I was not built to deal with. So I would be getting blottoed. So I'd go out, he'd have obviously he's buying everything for me, 5 or 6 pints, and I'd go home back to his, basically, where it was common for, like, funny enough, his brother would sleep round sometimes. There was like a main 5 or 6, including me, that was always around this particular flat. And so it was common for people to stay over. Okay. So I'd stay over, but I'd wake up in the morning and I would not know, like, literally, I'm not exaggerating. To this day, I've got no recollection of it. Anything that happened between a number of hours, like, often you're talking about eight hours almost, space of where nothing, I remember anything was going on. I was that just completely out of my face. And what's interesting is, moving forward to now, I've stopped drinking, and interestingly enough, when I was drinking, even as an adult now, I still experience the blackouts if I had too many, which is interesting how now I'm hearing a lot of information and theories about how it can lead back to detachment mechanisms you develop as a child when you experience these things. But anyway, so for the first few times, I don't think anything happened. But then, and this is where it's going to get quite brutal.
Can I just make an observation for people now as well? So, as a coach, whenever you're listening to these stories, it's very easy to get sucked into the story and you feel all of it. So I'm just going to give you guys just some things to try to detach from getting caught into the drama too much and being present on your own feelings too, because these things stay with you, right? So a good thing to stay present is your pulse in your wrist. Whilst James is talking, see if you can pay attention to your pulse at the same time. See if you can notice the feelings that come up. So you're almost like detaching yourself and you're paying attention to you and James. And it's a really, really powerful technique, because what happens is, guys, when people do tell these stories, or we do see this horrible stuff on the news, or even on a film, when we're unconscious, that goes straight into our head. So it's to try to detach from it, because all of a sudden, like, my role as a coach, I can't be getting into this drama if my job is to help coach. So I'm asking you guys, work on this, because the more present you can be with your loved ones, the more your loved ones can actually say what they need to without worrying that they're going to upset mum, without worrying that someone's going to react differently because you're staying neutral. And it's difficult, but I'm asking you guys, pay attention to your pulse, at this moment.
Cool. And so the first time I suspected something had happened is I woke up and I had discomfort around my backside. I was thinking, to be honest, I remember I was thinking, oh, I must have ate something last night. And just feeling like maybe my guts up. But I didn't have any idea, I didn't have any clue, but it was just that, that's weird. It was the first time I ever felt, well, that's just a bit strange. And of course, I asked to this person, what happened last night? oh, you same old, same old. And what it is, I say he created this role of the role I had played back then in that for me to fit in. This was the role, this little 13-year-old James who just wanted to be around the lads played it. Oh, this is the role I'm playing. Okay, which was, yeah, you went out, you had a dance, you had too many, we had to carry you home again, got sick. And I would just go, I just believed everything because I was just caught up in this amazing world of little ego being, wow, look, these kids, these guys are taking me out. They took me out to my first nightclub when I was 13, Romford, Hollywood. And if that resonates with anyone there, and Fifth Avenue when it was called The Avenue, it took me there as well at 13 years old. So I'm living that life. So the first time it happened, I just thought, okay, it's just a bit weird. I just didn't know what it was, and left it to it. Then the following weekend, so this became a weekend pattern of going round to his. Going out, getting blottoed, me just not remembering anything what had happened. So then the next week, sure enough, woke up on the Sunday morning, same thing, discomfort around my backside. What's going on this time? So this time, which I didn't do the time before, I actually checked, and again, apologies, it's going to be graphic, but this is mad. This is what I was experiencing at the time. After using the toilet, I checked to see, and there was blood on the tissue. So I was thinking, right, something's not right. Something's definitely not right. But I still didn't know what, I think my soul knew more than anything something was off, but there was this instant inner massive fear that had kicked in egotistically that was just still playing it down. So then what happened was that day, funnily enough, that same day that I checked with, and I told you I'd found a bit of blood, I was so scared, confused. What I did was I went into the living room at one point during the day, and I just wanted to get home at that point, and I laid down and pretended I was asleep, okay, on the floor. And then the next thing I know, I heard two other lads from the area that come in, and I felt this person kicking me on my bum, like pushing my bum. And like I just sort of froze almost because it was all so weird, everything that had been going on. And he actually said to these two younger lads, which were my age, they was a little bit older than me, but more my age. He went, I'll never forget it because this is what cemented home. No, something is wrong here. He said, look at that. He wouldn't even know if someone was shagging him up the arse. So them words, I will never forget how that felt when he said that. And I just froze. And I was just laying there for a minute, and I thought, fuck, what is going on? What is going on? But even still, my ego, the next weekend, I can't remember all in complete ins and outs of time frames, but it was definitely within 2 weekends of that weekend. I might have not seen him for one, but then the next week I went.
What was going through your head at that point then in the week?
Have I been fucked? At 13 years old, have I been fucked? I'm just being really brutally honest. That's what was going on. Am I gay? Like, is this really happened? Am I imagining it? That was what was going on. It was knowing.
Did you want to tell anyone, or was it?
Nah, definitely. It's funny. Do you know what? This is the most in depth I've ever recounted this with anybody. No, I didn't. It's funny I brought up the memories. No, I definitely didn't want to tell no one. I just wanted it to not be. That's what I wanted. No, that just can't. So much so that, like I said, my ego. Like I've got the messages that the guy even bought me a phone. I had a. If people remember when the Mercury 301s came out with a big flip, the fat phone, I had one of them at school at 13 years old. So I had a phone like this guy. If you think about the grooming that's been going on to this stage, so he's texting me, "Oh, you're gonna come out this weekend?" Blah blah blah. And so basically, the next weekend, so I missed him for one weekend, but then the following weekend, I went back and I thought, right, gotta be brave, go out with them. I'm not going to drink as much. I'm going to drink some, but I'm not going to drink as much so that I definitely don't knock out for a night. But I'm going to pretend as if I'm going to knock out for the night. So followed it, like I said, and even get again now, like I'll recount this, but if I was to hear my 13-year-old or any 13-year-old tell this story and knowing that they wasn't getting help from an adult or someone to actually that could do something about it and put an end to this, put this guy away, get him arrested. Like that's what now as a man, I'm like, oh, how could you not have done that? Could you not have given them people? But I'm concocting this little plan to find out basically at 13 years old if someone's basically molesting me. So I did that. Went home. Sure enough, I was trying to pretend to be asleep, but like not sleep. But I did end up falling asleep. But I didn't go in. It was a natural sleep. It wasn't a alcohol-induced comatose sleep. It was me falling asleep. And I woke up because I could feel something wasn't right. And I woke up, which again will stay with me forever. I mean, thankfully I can talk about this now, but these are the things that stick with kids as well. I can tell you because I was a kid at the time. I woke up to this man's head in between my legs with my penis in his mouth. And I just flinched. Now, that, obviously he realised, oh, he's woken up. So he's got up, walked around to the bed, because we wasn't in the same beds. Like I said, there was 3 beds in this room because there was only 2, me and him sleeping in there that night. But normally there was another guy that was slept in it. It was just a lad's DOS house, basically. He walked back round to his bed, laid down on his bed. And at this time, so I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so I've sort of looked over, like I've turned my head, pretend I'm asleep, but open, you're trying to look through your lashes. And I turn around, look, and I can see he's looking at me and he's masturbating under the duvet while he's looking at me. So my heart is just going boom, 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 boom. It must have been, I don't know, it felt like this surge of energy, like run, and it just came up, and I was just laying in the bed, like literally shaking. What am I going to do? I got up, literally jumped out the bed, and bearing in mind, I only had on my shorts. I didn't have a t-shirt on. I didn't have any shoes on. Okay, so I jumped out of the bed, and he lived on the 17th floor of a high-rise tower. So it's a lift journey down. Could you imagine having to wait for the lift or the stairs? So I've flown out of the bed, run towards the front door, open the door. I forgot he's got one of them bloody security gate metal things, like the ones you put open to protect people from, people breaking in. Pop the key on that. All the while I can hear noise from behind me coming. I just took off down the stairs. I ended up running home. I'm not going to name places at this point, but it was in East London. I remember I ran from basically Mile End to Forest Gate. For those who wouldn't know, that's God knows how many miles, but literally I grabbed my trainers, I had a t-shirt, shorts, and I ended up at a very well-known flyover. I jumped over the bridge running home because I just wanted to go home at that point. Jumped over the bridge onto the canal because I thought, let me run down the canal. Flipping jumped over the bridge onto the canal, literally heard my name being called. He'd been following me and shouting at me. I took off down the canal, ended up, and I'll never forget, this person will never know this, but I'm going to name you because you're an amazing guy. Dean Webb. He was Ginge, my mate Ginge from school. Beautiful geezer, lovely down to earth, salt of the earth. Just so happens while I'm running along in a pure terror, panic, that Ginge is sitting there with one of his mates that they'd been on the canal night fishing for the night. Because this is all happening for early hours of the morning. This has gone on, bear in mind, because obviously this all happened, God knows, like 4 or 5 in the morning, something like that. So anyway, long story short, he looked at me like, what are you doing running? And I made up some bollock story, I can't even remember, but he lent me some clothes and whatnot. But then reality sunk in. I realised if he's followed me to where he's followed me to, I wonder if he's gone to my house. And then that's when the decision was made. I'm not going to tell anyone about this. If he's at my house, there he's already beat me there and he's with my mum and dad and with my family, I'm not going to tell anyone about this. And a long story, very short, because there's so many other little bits that happen on that journey. But got home, I saw his car outside before I got. So you can imagine, at 13, I'd left his, experiencing what I'd experienced, hoping to get home, and now finally, look, this is going on, mum and dad, blah, 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 blah. With my terms, because he wasn't going to be there, that was where my head was, to then realising after that run, 3.5 mile run down to where the canal was from Mile End, to then realising this guy is going to be at my house before I get there, talking to my mum and dad, and then my little ego going, what's he said to your mum and dad? What's he going to say to your mum and dad? Because this guy was in with my family. He was seen as my sort of new big brotherly, mentory person that's going to help me through this difficult period, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, at 13, I walked into my house, my place of safety and solace, and where I just wanted to let it all out, and he was there. And what was interesting was he'd concocted some story about me and about how dangerous it was what I'd done. So my mum and dad had a go at me, and I stood there and I took it in my kitchen because he was there as well. I stood there and took it in my kitchen because I couldn't at that point face now, because of their, and it not their fault, because now this was an energy of anger that I was now in. Every part of my desperation just left, because this is the lessons that I want to share and make adults realize, because your energy, and don't get me wrong, I have a go at my kids. Yeah, I try not to, but normally with children are so fucking pure and angelic and just right and wrong, and there's no middle area. When they're persistently showing signs of certain traits, often there's something else going on underneath. When I work with kids, it's definitely shown us that massive, especially with what's going on with this young girl with cancer, Daisy, beautiful 15-year-old. But so back to my story. So I bet I made a conscious decision then to bury that. And what made it even worse was my parents. I then started not wanting to go and see this guy, and my parents were like, "You're always like this. You can't see. You've got such a good thing with this guy. You know, he's taking care of you. Blah, blah, blah. You're a fair-weathered friend, and you're changing your friendships." And I had to sort of wean off of him to make it so it wasn't too, because I realised it's going to be too suspicious for me to just completely break away after I'd been infatuated with this new lifestyle of everything amazing for the last few months. So yeah, and that led then, that decision, like I said, walking into my own home and seeing the person there that had done what he'd done to me was enough for my ego to go, safety mechanism, we're pushing that down deep. That is never, ever coming up again. And that's how it actually happened.
When you met, and you said you had other interactions with him after, did he ever mention it? Did he ever act any differently?
Didn't mention it. And I can only assume he was hoping that I wouldn't mention it. But it really does. Even recounting it, the story, I feel for kids that have to go through this stuff, because it's the emotional turmoil of when you're just finding out as well. I mean, I was 13. As kids, as we know, I mean, kids as young as you don't even want to know that experience horrific abuse. And this is why this subject is so important for people to be talking about. And
Yeah, I just want to say to you, mate, like, just in terms of telling that story again, because like you said, it's the deepest you've gone into it, and that takes bravery, it takes courage. The way that you do it as well, it is, I always imagine, like, what would it be like? And I don't want to. I don't even want to imagine it. So I give you a lot of credit and a lot of respect for that as well. And also, like, this is why it is so important to hear these stories, because how many people do you think go through life and don't say a thing? And yet when one person hears this story that's happened to them, I guarantee that they know they can reach out to you. But yet we normally work with therapists, or we work with people that have never been through this experience before, but yet they try to help. But deep down, they don't have that attachment to the person that's suffering. So I want to put this out there to everyone watching, and everyone that does watch this video. If this has ever happened to you, reach out to James. Like, go directly to his page, give him a message on there, we all know someone that's had something like this as well. And even if you've had help before, I do think there's something about speaking to someone that not only has been through it, but I think the way that James has dealt with it and the incredible work that he's doing now, it changes lives. It really does. So I think, first of all, yeah, mate, it's amazing what you're doing. And then I'd like you to talk now from the parents. So look, like, you've gone through this, you've dug it so deep. You've got to a point now where you've spoke your story, and I know you reflect on everything you do now. You've always got this little voice that you're working with. Now, going back from a parent, what would you say to people watching this now that do have kids? And I really hope these things don't happen, but they do go on in the world. What checks can parents do, and what things can they be on the lookout for, just to make sure that their kids are okay?
Do you know the first thing, which is blatantly obvious, is there will be a change in behaviour. Because, and again, this goes back to I'm just sorry, I'll stop then, because I was recounting the story. As I said, I started this conversation by talking about a gentleman that I've recently spoken to who shared his story, and it's what when you listen to, it's funny because when I listen to him, I listen to his little boy self, even though it was his big voice coming through. And what I twigged and resonated with mostly is I was like, I remember that voice and that feeling and that energy, because that's what it is there's an energy that as a child, again, you don't know what's going on, that it knocks your natural childlike logic, which is, I'm a child, I'm love, I'm kindness, I am loved, I am precious, like all the things that a child deserves to feel. You feel that. Well, I hope, actually, disclaimer, I know that's not the case for every single child, and that breaks my soul, but you'd hope as a child they feel loved, and that's this protection. Love is protection, and big people are nice to me. Childlike logic, simple as that. So what happens is it knocks that out of sync at a time where you're not an adult to have to reflect on, and you're in this next, you've been shifted almost lanes. Because for me, my teenage years definitely went wayward. Me going to prison, again, definitely because of what had happened to me. Indirectly, if you look at the pattern, and again, that change in behaviour only evolved. I've been thinking about it. So for 6 years, prior to really voicing this and getting this out there, a lot of that, what I held from that, got from that period of when it happened at 13, it led into dealing drugs in my teenage, trying to do things that were cool, trying to feel manly again. That was another thing, trying to get back that masculinity that I felt I'd lost because of what had happened. So my point is the change in behaviour, and that will often be, and I'll give an example to show you how real this is. I have failed my son. I've failed my son so many times. And I'm not claiming to be a perfect father. I'm always trying, and I'm always saying sorry to my child. And I love having to say sorry because I know in my soul there's a lesson there for me. But my son's behaviour, when we moved into a new school, shifted dramatically. And he was being a little git at home, basically. And it wasn't him. That's not him. But we thought, is it new kids? This is the egotistical parent, Mr. Me being present.
Turning into a teenager.
Yeah, turning into a teenager. Is this the new kids' influence, blah, blah, blah. But what it was, and finally one day he broke after about 3 months of this behavioural change in him, that he was being bullied. And that broke me and my wife because we just didn't suspect it for a second. Not for a second. But looking back now, the shift in his behaviour, he just wasn't being himself. So what I'd say to parents is, and this covers all bases, if your child starts showing some different traits, changing, it will often be for a negative. There'll be something in there that they're just doing, often to get your attention, but because they don't know how to deal with it, it'll be in a way that is what they're feeling is negative. So I've got this negative shitty feeling, I don't know really how to deal with it, so I need to get that out, and that comes across to you, the parent, as negative and annoying and frustrating. That behavioural change, albeit maybe quite small, that could really signify something very, very significant that's going on in your child's life. That could be awful, like the story I've told you. It could be something else, but it doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't matter what it is, because I know my role as a dad, in my world as fatherhood now, is being present with my son. So that means when we talk, I'm focusing in on what he's saying, his body language, because kids are bundles of energy. They're giving so much away with the stuff that you know when a kid like, did you do that? No, like kids are energetic beings. So if you focus on your child, I'm not saying you're not, but I'm talking to myself here. Big mirror for me. That's what I had to learn. Focus on my child's energy and what they say without saying anything. Read between the lines, and I learn so much more about what it was to be a dad as well. And being present with your child feeds off. It means your child realizes, oh, okay, I've got dad's full attention. He's not looking at his phone. He's not, I know, hold on, son. And don't get me wrong, I'm still guilty of doing it from time to time, but I try as much as possible just to be in that lane with him, especially after the bullying thing. So now, if he ever shows little signs of something, rather than get angry with him, and it does take this, and like I said, I fail often. On the last show we did, I was honest enough to say I was late because it was my fault. I mistimed it. The kids went to the fair, and then I got angry with the kids who were just buzzing from being at the fair, driving home. I got angry and lost my temper and raised my voice. So I'm not preaching at all. I'm sharing. That's what we do. But look for changes in behaviour, because they definitely, it's not just the classic, I don't know why he's like that. We give him this, we give him that. That's about you. Stop making it about you. Understand this beautiful little, the best part of you ever is what you created. If they're showing signs that something's off, it's your job to investigate, not to point a finger and to punish. That's not to say kids don't deserve punishing at times. They do. But sometimes, imagine you're punishing a child just being abused. You're telling that child, you shouldn't be acting this way. But that child, which was me in that case, when I'm trying to pull away, you're a fair weather friend. My parents thought they were teaching me lessons of being a good friend. In my head, I'm thinking, I just want to get the fuck away from this guy who's messed with me. But I can't tell you about it, because also at this point, my ego's developed also. You could never tell mum and dad. They'd feel so guilty. Like, I realised that. So that, my point is, when you're pointing your finger, is if it's something that's repetitive in your child and you've noticed that difference, there's a good chance something, not necessarily abuse, but something might need addressing. And that starts with literally come down to their level, give them a big cuddle, whatever it is. Bring that energy down to that level to make sure they feel that they're not being judged. And they're on that foundation that we always talk about of, right, I'm with my mum or my dad, or my mum and my dad, and this is the place where everything comes out. And that's what I'd say.
Got a question there as well, James. What if this happened, if it was a few years earlier? Would you even remember it?
I don't know, actually, because it's interesting, because I've spoken to a few people now who've, 2 women as well, that have been through similar circumstances. And it's interesting how each story has got their own version of almost a detachment mechanism that's blocked out some of it. But there's, again, each story common denominator is there's like an inner knowing that, yeah, I know, but it's almost, again, which shows that it's not fully dealt with. Because if you know something, it's there. It means you feel it. A feeling is, again, we say about this all the time, feelings mean something. They genuinely do. The feelings, again, and you can't touch a feeling, you can't squeeze it, so it's not tangible, but it's energy, it's your spirit, it's your soul. So, yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but what was that next one? Sorry, how long was the... Well, what's it? Again, another story. So I pulled away. I stopped going to the church, the nightclub, the youth club in the church. I stopped going to that. And so I went back to my old mates, being around my old mates, which felt so good. but there'd been a change in me. I always felt I had to prove myself all of a sudden. But then, interestingly enough, when I ended up, so I've been to prison. I'm sure that if you haven't seen on this video, you've seen on other videos. I ended up, again, what I went to prison for, funnily enough, turns out a lot of it was down to the fact that the drinking to get to a place where I wanted to forget things, blacked out, didn't really know what had happened that night, to be completely honest. But point being, depends how young, I was about 8 and remember it all. There you go. Sorry, let's touch on that because that answers that person's question as well. Thanks for sharing that, Mrs. Colombo. Thank you very much. So I was about 8 and remember it all. Yeah. My heart's with you, sister, genuinely. That's an awful thing to experience at any age. 8, yeah, it's horrible. Yeah, sorry, as if I digressed there a little bit.
Yeah, I remember I was 9, but I didn't understand until I was older and what actually happened.
Oh, sorry, can I just finish that? How long was this guy the family friend? So when I ended up going to prison, I become very estranged from. Again, just shows you. Look at all the repercussions. Like I don't want to go on forever, but me and my dad's relationship totally deteriorated, totally, because I couldn't tell him. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed, but also he was still running a church. I hadn't told him any different. So he's still running the church youth club. This guy still comes around from time to time for Bible studies at my house, and I'm getting now. I'm like, you know, I was up to 16 at that point when it's the. This is when I broke from my dad because it coincided when my mum and dad split up, funnily enough, as well. That thankfully I was around 16 years old, but I went off with my mum. Yeah, when I went to prison, I found out, well, actually, sorry, before going to prison, I went on a run. Jesus Christ. Before going to prison, I went on a run. And before I went on a run, I went to see my dad. And it was at that point, I let on to my dad a little bit about I started to tell him, and he shut me down in a way that it felt like he didn't believe me. And then basically I found out years later, after going on a run, going to prison, coming out of prison, I found out years later that he'd still met up with the guy after I'd let on to a bit of it, and that he told my brother that he didn't believe basically what I said. So yeah, he stayed around the family for quite some years. Not anymore, because I've now addressed my dad about this situation. So he now knows. But yeah, if that answered that question.
Do you want to answer some of those as well?
So what have I missed, mate?
So children don't understand what sexual abuse is, and that's why they are so vulnerable. And again, this is parents just in terms of the way we approach our kids as well, because we work again with people that have cancer, and it's normally the loved ones that are there. But sometimes that love can be so overpowering when someone is suffering and someone needs to talk. So when you notice a change, rather than being like, what's wrong, what's up, sometimes that's hard for someone to answer, reply to. Sometimes they won't even respond to you because they love you so much they don't want to put the drama on you. So questions are always a good thing first. Try to ask a question, but hold the space and just watch their reaction. Even though they don't give you an answer, you might really know something's up. What would you recommend though, James, if you've got that inkling? Again, you're a parent too, and you're not getting anything from your kids.
Well, if we're referring now to abuse, okay, if is that what you mean in this particular scenario? Right, lovely. So in this scenario, and the reason I emphasised making sure I was right on that is because what my actions would be, regardless of what my child was, you know, oh, Dad, you know, I would cut off contact. Oh, Dad, why are you doing that for? Well, you know, you ruining my life. All the stuff that a kid might say to a dad or to a mum that's, you know, experiencing this, like I said, all of a sudden this luxury, got a phone and all that, because grooming is a thing. We know that grooming, you're a child, you get groomed, you go with it because you're getting stuff given to you. But as an adult, back to my point is, if you've got the slightest inkling, is you cut off that contact instantly, and I would speak this is what I would do. So I took a breath there just to think, what would I, from my soul, do? I would talk to the person and I would address them no matter what, because as we've said before about truth, if you feel something's your truth, no matter how it's received by that other person, not your problem. Because if you hold in something like that as a parent and don't voice it, you're going to beat yourself up about it later for sure. So I would address the person and air my suspicions. That's what I would do. And then after that, I would talk to my son or my daughter about the situation.
Okay, you've got a really good question there. Is it worth dealing with your past trauma abuse? Isn't it better to move on because you can't change the past?
Definitely not. Definitely not. That I tried that, and everyone I've spoke to, again, there's this really funny how there's common denominators that are do you know what?
Can we define dealing as well? Because there's dealing in terms of the things that went on, but dealing as you as the individual, because we have to go back to understand. And I think there's a different. I'd like to try to define what dealing is. I'll let you carry on there, James.
Yeah, no problem.
Sometimes people will go back and try to find the person, try to do all this sort of stuff. Whereas also dealing, trying to reflect on it, learn from it, because where you are now is where you are. Like, yes, your past has happened, but that thing will stop you moving forward if it's not dealt and it's been crushed so far down. And I will speak for James in terms of my witness of his behaviour change since he has come out. Completely different person. Like, the guy's smiling all the time, and we connected on loads of different levels, but there was this instant shift. It was like a whole weighted vest had just been taken off him, but also what happens and comes into your life and the things that you can now bring in from being able to deal with it. It was like a big relief that I witnessed.
Thanks, mate, because it was true. That's what it felt like. It was an instant, and that's the answer. You answered that question perfectly, mate, for me. That is the answer. It's not even a case of dealing. Okay, for me, it's simple. You clear it out. You have to clear it out, and that starts with you clearing it out for yourself. You have to experience telling that story, because that's how you get it out. Because think how long you've held it in for. You know, it might take a few goes. It took me a few goes. Again, my ego, after doing it the first time, coming out of this the first time, my ego piped up like, are you going to tell your story again? And it made me feel, oh, am I now playing a victim card? Am I just, oh, look at me, I got abused. But like, and that's fucked up. So it's there again. But that is if you think about it, because the more you tell the story, the more someone else might listen and go, oh, fuck me, if he's talking about the way he is, yeah, I will have a chat with him, because it's something that straight away it's a pain shared. It's an energy shared, a negative, shitty energy shared. So yeah, you definitely clear out. Definitely not worth holding on to. Your past doesn't define you, for sure. Part of your story is always going to be part of your story. Now, part of your story, if you're not getting that out and that's a bad part of your story, guess what it does inside your body? It manifests into badness. And I mean that by sickness. And I genuinely mean that. Look at the works of some incredible doctors like Christian Northrup and people like that. That next comment, as a parent, having gone through this, you're hyper vigilant and wrap them in cotton wool without them ever knowing why. Yeah, you do. And funny enough, me coming out with it has made that less, not less important, because you loved your kids and protect the kids the same way. But that's still unfortunate for me. My opinion, by the way, this is just my opinion. That would be me still holding on to a bit of that negative energy, and then indirectly, this is my opinion, by the way, infusing onto my kids, over wrapping them up but you know, and it might be lovely for the kids, but we know in ourselves that comes from an energy which isn't a lovely place. It's a loving effort, but the energy itself, for me, still is feeding off of the shit that you've cleared out. Once you clear that, you clear that. I talked to my son. Me and my son can have open conversations. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'll answer his questions, so he's empowered. But I don't want him to, and I'm not saying anybody else does, it's just like I said for me, I don't want any of my kids not to expect, but to think that this is a norm that I just don't want it in their energy. Yes, I'll make them aware shit happens and there's nasty people in this world, but that's not where you focus your energy. You focus your energy on yourself moving forward and all the wonderful things that is available to you in this world, including many, many wonderful big people that are loving and kind and generous and just want to help children. Because back when I grew up, like I said, I'm 40 years old. I was talking to my wife about this earlier today. I grew up in a very working class area in East London, and the community raised kids. There was everyone's parents sort of chipped in with parenting. I love that. That's gone, which feels a lot of that's gone now, which is such a shame, because children are part of our community and we should all be pitching in to guide our kids.
Yeah, I love that. And James, is there anything else you want to share on this in terms of your experiences or where you're at the moment now then, in terms of everything you've been through? You're now a coach, you're now having people reach out to you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Share your story. That is honestly, that's the way. Everyone who's that has reached out off the back of me talking about this has said the same thing. Oh, thank you for sharing. Or I said, well, no. And then they'll share, and I said, thank you for sharing. Like it is an instant, because not only are you serving your soul by sharing your story, but you're helping someone else. And we all do. At our core, we all love helping other people. I genuinely know it's not even a belief. We all feel great when we do something nice for somebody else. So sharing your story is so important, because like I said, again, you give someone a choice to be able to then clear out something from them. Look how much it meant to you clearing it out. Look what you can then give to someone else by just you clearing it out. We're all winning. In regards to where I'm at with it, definitely we've got a lot of, obviously we've been working on a lot of workshops lately, but definitely want to do more work with kids around mindfulness and things to look out for. I'm approaching my son's school. I live in Spain. I'm going to be approaching his school about doing some work with the kids there. Just mindfulness stuff. The thing is, you can make children aware of themselves without, and the importance of being in control, even at that age, of everything about themselves, including who touches them, without having to go down the route of making it graphic, just making it logical for the child. For the child. So definitely want to do more work around that, as if we can get into our workload.
Mm-hmm. And guys, I just saw two really powerful comments, not ready to share their story or not sharing their story, which is okay too. If you know it's eating away at you inside, one of the best things you can do if you don't want to share your story is to listen to other people's story. Because there's one thing that can be said that you'll latch onto, the same feeling, the same scenario. And sometimes all it takes is that one thing for you to make another step forward. So it's to really, like, every now and then give yourself that space to check in with yourself. How are you feeling? Because it is eating away at you. That just manifests over time. And I always say it goes beyond us, but we have to serve ourselves first, because we also serve other people. But serving other people when we've got our own wounds and traumas that are hidden, it's very difficult to do that. So it's almost like, right, let's get us full. Let's deal with the things and listen to other people's story. And that can really help make some changes too.
Hang on, mate. And I'd just like to move on to why another reason that this, I wanted to make sure we had a chat about this tonight. Number one, like I said, for that gentleman, shout out to you who reached out to me. We had that amazing conversation, and again, just made me realise how important it is that I still keep sharing, especially when I get a sign to share. That was a sign for me, right, you need to tell your story again. No problem, I'll tell it again. But also, it's a bit of a theme for this week on Lads Talk Health as well. I'm sure, hopefully a lot of you have already joined on to our Lads Talk Health platform on Insta as well. We've got some Telegram channels now as well, which we're giving out a lot of good information and some real hard-hitting truths about stuff that maybe we can't talk about on Instagram. So it's well worth tuning into. Harry, if you can put a link, actually, that's a good point. We should have done that before. But we've got a guest coming on this week. It's going to be incredible. So this is a young black lady who was adopted after a white family, who has got an incredible story to tell about her experience in the world of adoption, because it's not what we're told. And me and Harry's work with looking into this stuff has gone back some years, quite a few years now. And what I've experienced firsthand with social services, there is legal kidnapping going on all over the world, all over the world. And again, this is not my disclaimer. I've said this every time I've talked about it. This is not having a go at any good human being who chooses to adopt a child from anywhere, whatever background, doesn't matter, but to adopt a child and love that child and give that child genuine love and nurture that child. You're amazing. You're a hero. And fostering, same way. Unfortunately, there's an undercurrent which is huge, which is a financial business, which is actually set up to take children away from parents, babies, straight away from their parents without a choice. And the biggest part of this legal kidnapping goes into child sex trafficking. So this week we've got a guest, Frida, beautiful, like I said, lady coming on to tell us her story in regards to being adopted and also the opinions that get cast on adoptees. You should just be grateful. You don't know what I've been through to tell me I've just been grateful. It's interesting to hear her story. So yeah, and then me and Harry are going to do a bit around just making people aware maybe some of the statistics around child sex trafficking. I had a really good chat the other night without you, but Pizzagate come up and some other bits and pieces. So yeah, there'll be stuff that we can have a chat about. That's going to be thanks a lot, Val. That's going to be really relevant this week.
So that's going to be tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m.
Sorry, Hazard. Actually, I spoke to Freedom earlier. She's not feeling that well. Wednesday. Sorry, it's Wednesday. Okay. She's going to be on.
Okay, I'll change the post. So Wednesday then, that'd be at 8
Wednesday, sorry, yeah. It's Wednesday. Yeah, so that'll be 8 o'clock UK time, right?
Yes.
Fine, mate. Brilliant.
Okay, mate, James, thank you so much again for sharing. And guys, thank you for being brave and actually watching that all the way through as well, because it is a hard subject, but these things do happen. I think just bringing awareness to it, something you might spot going in the future now, which could change everything. So I want to say a big thank you to you guys too.
Nice one. See you later, people. Love to all.
Take care.